So, you want to use physical terrain for your D&D campaign but don't know where to start? Well, you're in luck, because I have these 5 simple builds for you. Let's get started. When I started DMing, I wanted to be able to convey these grand, epic fights, but there was one main problem that I was having. You see, Theater of the Mind combat can get very convoluted and confusing. I feel like there was so much time trying to figure out where everyone was, or wasn't there a bandit over there, and didn't there used to be an NPC with us here? And that just was a mess. But on the other hand, I feel like dry erase maps can be flat and boring, and then stuff like Dwarven Forge is insanely expensive. I was just looking on their website and I found that the just one of the first things I saw, City Builder Basics Wood Starter, $172. I do not have that money. I am poor. These terrain pieces are going to be your first steps into building terrain for D&D, and it's not going to be anything extravagant, but I truly believe that whether you're a new DM or a veteran DM, having these 3D terrain pieces will thoroughly make your combat and your campaign feel a lot more interactive and vivid for your players. The first piece of terrain that we're going to make is a simple camp tent, and this tent can be used in a variety of ways. It can be used as a makeshift camp for your adventurers, or a goblin camp or bandit camp that you adventurers have to go and raid. The only materials that you will actually need for this build is one white felt sheet, and you can pick something like this up at your craft store. I think I bought that for 25 cents. You also want to buy a brown one, also 25 cents, and then some toothpicks. I don't think you can buy individual toothpicks. You only need 9 toothpicks for this build. Well, 9 if you don't break any like I did. How much do toothpicks even cost? Let's look on Amazon. 1,000 for $4. What's the cheapest option? 2,400 for 7? Oh, what was I saying? If you don't want to go to a craft store to buy just individual pieces of felt, you could also probably use printer paper, but I'm not a huge fan. I prefer to use the felt because it's so soft and it feels like an actual camp tent. Anyways, with your toothpicks, you're going to lay out a base, and toothpicks that I ended up buying are 2.5 inches, and I looked it up. I took the time to look up the standard size of the toothpick, and luckily I had the standard toothpick. So if you buy a toothpick, you should be having the same size. You will then end up taking 3 of your 9 toothpicks and kind of cut them down to 1.5 inches. So for this, you can use some scissors or a sharp knife for this part. I kind of just started grabbing random tools that I had lying around the house, and I couldn't find any other scissors besides these baby scissors that I can only fit 2 fingers into. When you're cutting, you should probably protect your eyes from flying pieces of toothpicks. Toothpicks tend to get launched whenever you cut them, so fair warning. Now you're going to end up gluing these 2 cut toothpicks and the 2 uncut ones to kind of create a rectangle. Make sure when you glue them together that both of the cut toothpicks are on the same side, laying on top of the uncut ones. And then for the last toothpick, you're just going to glue it on the middle, straight across, just like the other cut toothpicks. For the process of gluing, it would be ideal if you have a hot glue gun, and hot glue guns, they're not that expensive, I think. I looked it up on Amazon. You can buy one for $7, and they usually come with the actual glue that you would need. It just makes almost all of these crafts so much faster and easier to work with. However, for this camp tent, you can probably get the same result with using PVA glue or something like that. However, if you intend to keep on building terrain, I would highly recommend buying a hot glue gun. They are invaluable to making terrain. After you have your base, you're going to cut 2 pieces of felt, of your white felt or whatever color you want, and this is going to be roughly around 3 inches by 2 inches. At the end of each of these pieces, you're going to glue 2 of your toothpicks, and essentially you're just trying to leave enough room so that the top of the toothpick pokes out almost like half an inch or something like that. Next up, you're going to end up wrapping these toothpicks so that they're kind of fully rolled into the felt. Glue them down, place the bottom ends into each corner of the rectangle, and you're going to lean the tops in to kind of form a triangle at each side, and it's going to create a little X with the parts that are poking out of the felt. Now all you're going to do now is kind of just tidy things up a little bit. You're going to glue the middle parts of the felt to itself that's kind of running across. Glue the ends of the felt down to the base, and then add a little support in the middle that kind of sticks up from the middle short piece and touches the top of the felt. And then if the X pieces aren't quite touching, if it's not quite forming the X, you can just glue those pieces that are poking out. What better to go with our tents than some sleeping bags, or whatever fantasy people use to sleep in outside. I'm not really too sure. Anyways, they are made of the exact same material as the tent, so no buying new things for this craft. For our first step, you're going to make the exact same base layout that you did for your tent, except it's on a smaller scale, 1.5 by 1 inch instead of the 2.5 by 1.5 inch. After you do this, you're going to just cut a piece of white felt that is a bit longer than your base. Pro tip, you can always cut down your material, but it is really hard to glue it back on. After you do that, you're going to glue it onto the toothpicks, and with that little extra bit of felt, you're just going to bend it back, connect it to the back side of the sleeping bag. We're just going to call it that for right now. Glue it on, and you can trim down the extra pieces now. So then you're going to take a brown piece of felt that's the exact same size as your base, and you're just going to glue the bottom part of it on, and then fold the top part back, glue it down to itself, and it's going to look like a neatly made blanket. You can also do the same thing and kind of make it look unmade, and then all you have to do to add a little extra detail is just add a little tiny pillow. I know that my adventurers, they cannot leave home without their special pillow. These camp supplies, they're pretty neat, but let's add some more natural features to our terrain. There is some really awesome rock foam terrain, but I don't really want to dive into foam quite yet, just as a kind of starting point. You can always use just actual rocks for your D&D campaign. If you walk around long enough, you can probably find some neat rocks. But if you instead want to use something that's handmade and doesn't take a lot of time, here's my solution for it. You're essentially just making a crumpled ball of paper with a little bit of support. So all you need for this terrain piece, these rocks, is you need some aluminum foil, which you're going to end up crumpling up and making into some different shapes. And then you're going to basically take gray construction paper, kind of fold it, crumple it up to form around that aluminum foil base. This is pretty easy, pretty self-explanatory. The hard part is kind of when you're gluing down the bottom, you're essentially just going to make a lot of folds on each other. The bottom is going to look very ugly, but you probably won't ever flip it over to look at the bottom when it's actually on the table. So essentially, you're going to crumple it up, fold it over the aluminum foil, and then you are going to start gluing from the bottom up with your hot glue gun. If you use some PVA here, it's going to take forever to make these rocks. It is best if you try to make these rocks with some hot glue, and these rocks are super fast. So you're just going to start undoing the folds, gluing the bottom part down, gluing the next fold down, gluing the next fold down, until eventually the rock is completely covered in your gray construction paper. Now, this next piece of terrain is going to be a little bit more involved, but I promise it is worth it. We are essentially just going to make some barricades for creatures to hide behind and kind of make that more outpost camp setting. All you're going to need for this build is a pocket knife or an X-Acto knife, some half-inch balsa wood, and then some PVA glue, and also brown paint. So our goal here is to kind of create these spiked barricades that look like they were made from tree logs. So all you're going to do is you're going to cut this strip of balsa wood down, and you kind of want to vary the size. So you'll cut one down to 1.5 inch, you cut the other one to 1.25, you cut another one to 2 inches maybe, 1.75, to kind of create these various sized pillars. After you cut all these pieces down, you're going to start sharpening the edge with either your pocket knife or your utility knife, and you're kind of going to aim to make these look like spikes. So after you do this, you're going to glue 5 of these different pikes together, and this is going to create one big barricade. Just make sure that you kind of shape the bottom of it so that it does not fall over when you stand it up. Once you glue them together, they are going to be a lot more stable, but you still need to have that flat base. And you can see on one of these, I kind of went a little bit extra and did some sword marks or different cuts in the wood as well to kind of give a little bit more flavor to it. After you got these all glued together, you want to start texturing the sides of these balsa wood barricades. You can keep using your pocket knife or your utility knife, and you're just going to start scoring the sides of these barricades. Or if you have one, you can use your wire brush, and this is just going to speed the process up a lot faster, but you can still achieve a similar result with your knife. After you do this, you got everything textured. You're going to kind of ruin your texture a little bit. You are going to take watered down brown paint. You're essentially going for like the consistency of like chocolate milk, kind of very watery, and you are just going to put this onto the sides of your barricades, leaving that pike bit still that wood color. You may notice that some of your texture goes away after this. That's fine. After you paint it all, you're just going to retexture it. And I had to go back and carve back out my my sword marks into the barricades, which is perfectly fine. This build would probably take the most time out of all of the builds. Alright, so we have some scattered terrain pieces with our rocks, our barricades, our tents. We have one major problem right now. If we don't have anything to place them on, it'll be weird to just play them on the table. So now we're just going to create kind of a foresty grassland area. And for this, I went out and I bought a brown foam piece. I don't even know what it's called. I know that's not it, but it had like some like silly foam or something like that. What? Let me go find that actually. Oh, all right. Here it is. So this is Silly Winks. It's just a craft foam. It was 2 millimeters thick. If you want to know how big it is, and the color is cocoa. You just want to get something big enough to cover a 1 foot by 1 foot square. You could probably get something better than this. I just used this because I thought I could put in texture in it. It did not take texture well at all. So you could possibly use something like some paper that actually looks more like dirt or mud or anything like that. And you will see in my video making it that I tried my hardest to make it have any sort of texture, and I just gave up. And I tried to paint it to make it have that texture show up more, and it became a mess. It was a mess. But it still turned out all right. It still looks and has a nice texture to it, so it's fine. But the main feature here is the grass. The fake grass is probably going to be the most expensive thing that you'll buy, but I promise you it's well worth it. It makes the actual scene look a lot more realistic and feel better. And then for the kind of base, I used a piece of cardboard that was just from a box that was laying around the house. I cut it down to that 1 foot by 1 foot square that I'm using for my foam. I totally did the wrong order. I should have glued down the piece of foam down first before gluing down the actual grass. It would have been a lot easier to get it on, but that's besides the point. It turned out fine. If you end up gluing on the foam on first, make sure you have something heavy sitting on top of it. Cardboard has a tendency to kind of warp, especially if you use something like PVA glue. And then you're just going to cut down these grass pads into various different shapes to kind of give more visual intrigue into the kind of playmat that you're making. And yeah, after you cut those out, glue them down. Pretty self-explanatory. I used PVA glue for this instead of hot glue just so I could get better coverage. After all of this is done, you can see it all laid out with a nice scenery. But there is one thing that's missing, and I'll let you take a guess. If you guessed people, you are right. It is actually one of the big things about getting into D&D terrain is that you need miniatures, or you need stuff to actually represent the characters. And so you can use tokens, you can use paper cutouts. If you want to use something that's a little bit more person-like, you can use these peg dolls, which I found. These ones, it was $5 for $1. And then you could use these to represent your characters. You can draw on them with Sharpies. You can paint them up to look like certain races. You can even glue your foam to it. Glue foam, glue felt to make them look more like the characters they're representing, and without diving into the mess that is either 3D printing or buying miniatures. If you want to see these terrain pieces used in an actual scenario, I'll have a video posted later of me coming up with encounters for you to use, not only just these terrain pieces, but the peg dolls. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, comment, subscribe. This is my first video on YouTube, so I hope that it provided some useful information that you can use for your campaign going forward.